Hello and welcome along to the Matchbook Horse Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, standing in for Tom Stanley this week. And what an absolute weekend of race we have, the small matter of the Dublin Racing Festival from Leopardstown. Delighted to welcome Dan Overall, Donn McClean and Charlie Poste. Don, we'll go to you very briefly first. This is a brilliant festival that seems to be getting bigger and bigger each year, even if you look at some of the English that are going to be coming over this year.
So it was anyway, I'll take it up. Yeah, look, phenomenal meeting, Daniel. As ever, like 8 Grade 1 races, 15 races, and just chatting to Dan there off air, the way the races have stood up, the handicaps even have stood up really well. Of course, there's a Willie Mullins thread that runs very strongly through the whole meeting, so it's going to be interesting to see how Willie Mullins fares. But it's great that he's running a lot of his good horses against each other. So no, there's a depth to the meeting. And yeah, look, most of the best National Hunt horses in Ireland are going to show up over the course of the weekend. So no, it's a hell of a weekend ahead.
Yeah, Dan, you're not coming over for it. What's going on?
Oh, mate, I'm wounded. Like, it was one of those where for the last few months it's been talking about, oh, yeah, we're going to go over, lads. And then just the people I was planning it with just fell by the wayside and I just didn't get my arse in gear quick enough. So I'll be sat watching eagerly through the TV. But next year, Dan, I will be there with bells on. I guarantee.
Well, I've already recommended to you to go to Punchestown Friday. Charlie Poste, you're looking forward to the weekend. There's good action on the other side of the Irish Sea in Sandown too with the City Isles.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a grade 1 at Sandown, haven't we? With an Irish train favourite. So it could be the theme of the weekend, the continued Irish dominance, I'd say, Dan, unfortunately.
Yeah. That trend is set to continue this weekend. If you are watching the live stream, watching back the live stream, or listening to us on the podcast, if you head over to the YouTube channel and comment on this video afterwards, any feedback for the show, your DRF nap, you can have a chance to win a £25 free bet. And basically, a winner will be picked at random from all the comments in. So get involved in the comments on YouTube and let us know maybe your DRF nap, or if you missed Tom Stanley, whatever you want to say, do leave in the comments. We do read them all. I promise you that. And our Cheltenham Anti-Post previews out with Matt Toombs and Micheál Deasy. And we've so far covered the Arkle Gold Cup, Ballymore. They should be in your podcast feed now and well worth a listen there. So yeah, and hit that like button if you are watching indeed. We'll get straight into the action because we've so much to cover from Leopardstown Saturday and Sunday, plus the best of the action from Sandown, as I mentioned. We'll take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com for the 120 on Saturday, Nathaniel Lacey Novices Hurdle. And we take a look at the betting. Goodland is currently the 3.95 favourite on the Matchbook Betting Exchange, a bit bigger than the sports books at the moment. Quai de Paris 6.0, well fancied for the Willie Mullins team recently. We've all been caught. The British runner 6.4, Standard Clegane 7.4, American Mike 7.6, Grange Clare West 8.6, and 18.0, and bigger the rest. So Dan, we'll head this over to you. I mean, this is so competitive. Just looking at some of those horses available at 7, 8, 9.0 on the Matchbook Betting Exchange, I guess shows the depth of this race. But you do like the favourite.
Yeah, this is a brilliant race. Like, what a race to kick it off with. Unlike a few, obviously, we were talking about some short price favourites, but this one is wide open. Obviously, you've got the likes of Quai de Paris, who is still very much an unknown quantity, really. Obviously, he's been well backed in recent days, I think, for the Paul Town and Willie Mullins connection. Understandably, they clearly hold him in very high regard. American Mike, Grange Clare West on recovery missions, really. There's just so many in this race you can make a valid case for. But I really did like Goodland over Christmas, over this track. I just was really taken by that performance, jumped well out in front and quickened very stylishly under a Hands and Hills ride that day. It wasn't the plan to make the running, but I think in the end, the way the race panned out, they were almost forced to do so. Obviously, the fourth in that race was Embassy Gardens, who obviously has bolted up comfortably since and now is right at the top of the Albert Bartlett market. In fact, I actually backed Goodland for the Albert Bartlett after Leopardstown the last day. I didn't even get an entry, so that shows how shrewd I am in that regard. But he's a horse I have a lot of time for. I think over 2 miles 6 on good ground is pretty much what his ideal conditions, really. They said after the race he's all about stamina. And supposedly, from what I've heard, like, he isn't far behind Marie Nationale in terms of how he works at home. And obviously he's a very good benchmark and sits second favourite for the Supreme. So while he is shorter than I'd like, I can see him drifting slightly. So I wouldn't be backing him now. But I think if he gets to about 4.5, I might be tempted then.
Yeah, Dan, you mentioned the entries and not in the Ballymore, Don, and that's put me off a little bit of Goodland, because this race does tend to go to an Albert Bartlett winner, because just for those that don't know, it was 2 mile 4 furlongs, and then I think the Dublin Racing Festival came in. So for the last 4 editions, it's been ran over 2 miles 6, which seems to suit an Albert Bartlett type horse.
Yeah, no, exactly, Daniel. It's it can be a good pointer to the Albert Bartlett, but To be honest, I'm surprised Goodland is favourite. Like, I put him up as a horse to follow after he won at Leopardstown, thinking that he could be an 8 or 10 to 1 shot for this. And look, you can understand why he was very good that day, as Dan said. The time of the race was, I think, 3 seconds fast. There were 2 other hurdle races run over the same course and distance on the day, and he was 3 seconds faster than both of them, including She Wears It Well. She won the mare's race, and Charles Burns' horse finished 4th in the Lanzarote hurdle. He won the other one. So it was a good performance. It was only his maiden hurdle. It was only his only I suppose his only completion. Well, his only run really, because he unseated at on his first run. And Barry Connell's horses, he's just enjoying a tremendous season in company with Michael O'Sullivan, who's very good. Like, he was able to claim £5 in the maiden hurdle. Obviously, he's not able to claim £5 in the Grade 1. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Like, he rode Marine Nationale to win the Royal Bond hurdle, the Grade 1 race as well. So he's a very, very capable, very talented young rider. So I wouldn't worry about any of that, trainer or jockey for Goodland. But I just think he's short for what he's done. I was surprised that Paul Townend chose to ride Quai de Paris in front of Grange Clare West. So that's obviously a big pointer to Quai de Paris, who looked very good at Tremor in winning his maiden hurdle on probably ground that's different. It was heavy ground that day on New Year's Day. It's going to be better. And it's going to be interesting to see how the ground rides, because it is going to be better ground, and they're watering a lot. So it should be hopefully good, safe National Hunt ground. Sander Clegane comes into it as well. But yeah, I'm just thinking Grange Clare West is a big enough price, and that he could bounce back. Like, he's held in really high regard. He was sent off a short price favourite for the Grade 1 race at Naas, the last day, the Lawless of Naas race. He came back. It wasn't his running. He coughed a couple of times after the race, reportedly. So it's interesting that Willie Mullins is running him here, and he's a really classy horse. He's bred for stamina as well. He should appreciate the step up to 2 miles 6. And it's not ideal that Paul Townend isn't riding him, or has chosen to ride Quai de Paris instead. But Danny Mullins rode Manella Cooner to win this race last year, and Paul Townend chose to ride bronze. So and we're probably going to see a little bit of that throughout the weekend, that the Willie Mullins #1 may not necessarily be the one who does best in the race. So I just think that maybe the market has overreacted a little bit to Paul Townend not riding Grange Clare West. And as we've discussed before, Daniel, it's a jockey can only ride one horse. It's 1 or 0. There aren't degrees of what he's going to ride. We don't know how close a call it was for Paul Townend, but I'd say it might have been close enough, and I think Grange Clare West might outrun his odds.
Yeah, it's one of those where you don't know if it was a 100% decision or a 55-45 call. So it's a good point made by Don. Charlie, over to you. And I mentioned a lot of the English coming over. I was referring, of course, to the fans. I think 1 in 5 tickets, at least the early stage, were bought by fans. But you're putting up one of, I think, I didn't check the Sunday decks, but I didn't check for that race, but I think it's 1 of 2 runners this weekend, British runners. We've all been caught.
Yeah, I think there might be 3 runners, is there? I think 3. Alan King brings one over, and Phil Kirby brings one over in the handicap as well. So yeah, a select pool, but like you say, British punters going over in their droves. And I agree with what Don says. I think they're probably very talented horses, but you can pick holes in a few at the top of the market of what they have done up to now, and I can see the case for Grange Clare West. I also think for sure with Paul Townend, with the quality of Willie Mullins' stable, I'd say a lot of these calls that he's making, 60-40 calls, 55-45, as in, and it's not going to be easy. And I'd say there's going to be a few occasions where he's definitely going to get it wrong over the weekend. But yeah, I came down with We've All Been Caught. I mean, I think he's been slightly underestimated by the market. He won a point-to-point in Ireland. He was an expensive horse, I think 210,000 from the sales. He bumped into Hermes Allen in November. No disgrace in that. Probably Britain's leading contender for the Ballymore. And then the form of his race with Rock My Way was boosted last weekend with Rock My Way winning a Grade 2 there for Sid Hussey. He's a really uncomplicated, strong, staying, galloping horse. I think the boys have mentioned about this being more of an Albert Bartlett trial. And from what Sam Twiston-Davies has said, I think that's definitely where this horse is planning to end up. And he's just really likeable. And like I say, he has graded form in the book already. And I just think at the prices, he's maybe been ever so slightly underestimated.
Yeah, I kind of struggled myself in this race. This is probably the most competitive Grade 1, maybe outside the Irish Arkle this weekend. But Sander Clegane made my shortlist, but I am going to go with K de Paris. Like, there was definite serious confidence behind this horse in Tremor, serious amount of money. And while he wasn't necessarily visually impressive, the more you look at it, you could argue he does look a little bit more of an Albert Bartlett type. Obviously, the booking of Paul Town, and as Don touched on, has kind of reduced the price, but there seems to be a lot of confidence with this horse, and the Willie Mullins stable don't tend to miss too much in that regard. So it would be a tentative selection for K de Paris based on his Tremor run, but also I think he'll come on a lot for that run. And the 2 miles, 6 furlongs, I think this track might suit him too. So 4 different selections there, and I've also touched on another one, so you can kind of make a case for a lot of these horses. But we'll move on to the next race, which isn't as competitive. It is the Spring Juvenile Hurdle at the 155 at Leopardstown, and take a look at the betting that we currently have on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. Lossiemouth, very impressive this season. It's 1.38. Galan Marcoux, 5.8. Gusta Win, 15.0. Tiaco, 16.5, potentially aimed at the Boodles, perhaps. Ascending, 22.0 and 50.0 and bigger the rest. I don't want to spend too long in this race, guys, because myself, Charlie, and Don have put up Lossiemouth. We'll have a lot of time to talk about other competitive races. But Dan, you haven't done a without bet here. You've gone for a win place bet.
Yeah, and I guess it's just the structure of the race that swayed me that way. Like, I have nothing against Lossiemouth. Like, she's the right favourite. Completely understand why she's the price she is. I guess the only comments would be that she's run in 2 very slowly run races thus far. If Blood Destiny was here, that would really put the cat amongst the pigeons from a pace angle. But with the way the race is shaping, I just see it hard to see Garland Marceau out of the free. And that's kind of my logic for going down this route. Obviously made a great debut behind Lossiemouth the last day. Came with a very decent reputation from France too, not far behind Lossiemouth by all accounts. Pulled too hard, jumped pretty poorly as well, but still pulled well clear of the remainder last time out on her Irish debut, chasing Lossiemouth over about 7 lengths behind. There's definite improvement to come there. Danny Mullins is on. I just wonder, with a lack of a clear pace angle from what I can see, whether she might make the running. Given that she pulled quite hard last time out, obviously we know Danny Mullins from the front as well, how expert he can be there. Lossiemouth will want a target to aim at. So I can see that race panning out from that sense. And we know juveniles can just improve at drastically different rates. Like, she kind of reminds me a bit of Farclas from a few years ago. Obviously, I know a different gender and everything, but I think Farclas made his debut in the same race. Garland Marceau did. They both ran here. Farclas finished second, and then he went on to win the Triumph. Like, I think she's got the molds of that, where I think she's quite a strong stayer at the trip as well. So I just think in a race where a few really don't have much of a chance, like the Takawa looking at the Fred Winter in time, I just see it hard to keep her out of the free. If she gets an uncontested lead out in front and jumps better, she might give Lossiemouth something to think about.
Okay, yeah, there's an alternative to the favourite. Again, I don't want to spend too long, Don, but briefly on Lossiemouth and maybe that case that Dan made on this race.
Yeah, like again, it's pretty straightforward for me. I think Lossiemouth, she looks like the outstanding juvenile this season. She's been very good in both her runs so far for Willie Mullins, and I think she deserves to be a short price favourite. She's long odds on. She's not a bet for me, but it's an interesting race. Interesting, as Dan said, how Galan Marceau will go. Takao, I thought Takao did well to win the last day because he was a wee bit keen through the early stages. Mark Walsh didn't panic when Ascending came up on his outside and he went on. He probably won with a wee bit more in hand than the half-length winning margin. Ascending reopposed as well. He ran a nice race too. I think he was a Clive Cox in Britain. Got to a rating of in the 90s on the flat. And the two of them pulled nicely clear. So Ascending, Henry de Bromhead's horse, should progress from that. Interesting that Takao is wearing a hood for the first time as well. So he could come forward a wee bit from his run. But yeah, it's an interesting race with a view, an eye to the future. But yeah, I think Lossiemouth is by some way the most likely winner.
Yeah, Charlie, anything to add about Lossiemouth?
No, not really. I mean, like, you know, she looks outstanding. The vibes and the word has been that she is, and she's got a perfect race record to boot. I think, like the lads have already alluded to, that there's probably going to be some interesting horses in there with Fred Winters and whatever else in mind. But I'd be very surprised if she doesn't win tomorrow.
Yeah, the interesting gust of wind is entered here. Maybe the LA de Tom of this year's juvenile, perhaps. But we will move on to the 2:30 in Leopardstown. And this is, to be honest with you, race of the season contender, let alone this weekend. We've got a appreciated 2.64 Dysart Dino, who was long anti-post favourite, is now the second favourite based on jockey bookings 4.1, El Fabiola 7.2, Banbridge 8.6, Saint Wat 13.5, Phildor 15.5, and you've got horses like Flame Bear at 23.0, and Visionarian, who's I think a really good horse, 50.0. So look, Don, set up this race for us. We're actually in agreement ultimately on a selection. Like, I did struggle similar to the first race, but you do like Banbridge.
I do, yeah. No, this is I fully agree with you on the quality of this race, Daniel. It's a phenomenal race. Like you can make cases for all of them. Like El Fabiolo was a high class novice hurdler last season. He only just failed to beat John Bonnet Aintree and might have beaten him if he jumped the last better. And his jumping at Fairyhouse was very, very good. Paul Tannen just allowed him flow along in front. He was very good. Desert Dynamo, again, high class novice hurdler last season, won his beginner's chase by 28 lengths. Appreciated is the logical favourite with Paul Townend up, and he won the Supreme Novices Hurdle. He missed most of last season. He was due to go chasing last season, had a bit of a setback, stayed over hurdles, and only ran in the Champion Hurdle. And then this season again, his jumping has been very good. He's late coming to chasing. He's 9 now. He's just turned 9, but he's a lightly raced 9-year-old, and that was down to circumstance more than anything else. It's delayed embarking on his chasing career. Even San Ra, like he won the Grade 1 race at Leopardstown over Christmas, stayed on well to win. Maybe he can step up and trip going forward. And yeah, when you see Flame Bearer, who was one of the main talking horses at the start of the season when he joined Willie Mullins from Pat Doyle, and you see him at 20-1, that tells you how good the race is. But yeah, I do like Banbridge. Like when he won the Martin Pipe Hurdle last season at Cheltenham, I thought he'd go on and be a staying horse, a staying chaser this season. That's how he shaped on his debut at Goran Park when he won over 2.5 miles. But then they dropped him back down and tripped to 2 miles to run in the Arkle trial at Cheltenham. And I think we discussed this at the time, Daniel. I just thought the trip was too sharp for him, but he won really well. And it's his jumping, isn't it? Like he was only 3rd in the Drinmore last time, but that was on soft ground. I think on better ground, his jumping is a massive asset. He's just such an accurate jumper. And I think he's been a wee bit ignored in the market in the face of, the high profile Willie Mullins horses. So I think at 8.6, I just think that's a wee bit big.
Yeah, fully agree with you. Similar to you, Don, I really like this horse. I put him up as my best bet in Aintree, unfortunately, after his Martin Pipe win, but he's really taken to chasing. Now, you could argue going up to 2.5 miles in the Drimnor, between that and the ground, kind of caught him out a bit. But I think he may not necessarily be a 2-miler, but he may not necessarily be a 2.5. He might be in that little middle section. And for those that know, the Cheltenham Arkle course is a speed test, 1 mile, 7.5 furlongs, whereas the Leopardstown Arkle is 2 miles, 1 furlong. Or the Irish Arkle, so it is a little bit a steeper test, and that finish is quite tough. So I think if he's in and around with the pretenders, I think he will be staying up like a lot of them. And the way the pace sets up in this race, it is set up for a closer. So Charlie, a pace angle that I touched on, one of them is Dysart Dynamo, who is a type of horse that could just bowl out in front, and we'll never see him again until the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, there's a huge amount of horses that have made the run-in or can make the run-in. I'd be surprised if any of them lead this guy mind. I mean, he just seems like to be a ball of energy. Constitution Hill in the Supreme was obviously incredibly impressive, but I mean, maybe he would have fallen in a hole, but he was still tanking along when he tipped off 3 out. And his chasing debut at Leopardstown was incredibly impressive. He posted a big RPR figure. He jumped with aplomb. He's sort of dashing front runner. I'd say his run style is way more suited to chasing. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's one of these occasions where Paul Townend might have made the wrong call. Appreciate it's done nothing wrong, but he's looked much. He's won a long way. I feel it's been more workmanlike than Dysart Dynamo, and I just think he brings a huge amount of potential to the table, like a lot of these horses do. But I do think if he gets into an unharried, uncontested lead, yeah, I think he could be very, very good, this horse, in a race full of potential. And again, I'll be surprised if Willie's going to let this become a speed duel between a load of his contenders. El Fabio, appreciate it. You'd imagine that they're going to make a decision that one of them's going to make the run-in and the other is going to follow. I would have thought. I can't imagine he's going to be thrilled watching the 3 of them duel it out early doors through the first mile of this race and leave it up for a closer, as you quite rightly say, in Banbridge. So tactically, it's going to be fascinating. But if Dysart Dynamo gets loose on the front end, I think he's going to take a heck of a lot of pulling back.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the most likely that Dysart Dynamo will be at least one of perhaps no more than 2 leading. But I think sitting right behind him, Dan, will be appreciated. So I guess you can see him just sitting behind him, and then with his extra bit of stamina, he won a 2.5 mile bumper. You can definitely get out on top here, perhaps.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely seeing him just sitting in behind the leaders. How many there are is very much up to debate. I mean, there is plenty of pace angles here. If anything can quite go with Dysart Dynamo, maybe it's Flame Bearer, who again looked to be very much a precocious front runner in his 2 starts thus far of the fences and ran similarly over hurdles as well. You've got Visionarian, who tried to make all last day as well. There's so much pace in this race, and I think Appreciate its main asset thus far has just been his cruising speed. Like, he's just a relentless kind of cruiser for his races. I think Paul said last time out, where he's kind of forced to make the run-in, that he'd be crying out for a lead because he does nothing in front, and he's definitely going to get that set up here. Like, I think his jumping is solid without being spectacular, but I'd have no problem with that even over 2 miles, especially in a race that maybe run like this. You want a solid conveyance. I could just see him cruising into it pretty strongly off the back of that strong pace. And look, with Dice Like Dynamo, there's still so much untapped potential there. We don't know quite what he is. He could be anything, but I just have a feeling in a proper race like this, I'd be quite amazed if he's able to do what he's been doing to these horses. Like, because these are some high quality animals, and like, I know I Appreciate it's fairly short. Again, it's the Paul Townend choosing him factor, I guess, being a part of that. But one thing's for sure, this is going to be a spectacular race. Like, this is a race I'm most looking forward to this weekend. It might be all season, because this is a proper bust up between. This is basically the Arkle, maybe even a better version come Cheltenham. Like, it's fantastic.
Well, because of like the natural.
Nicky Henderson might have something to say about that, Dan.
Well, yeah, I guess it's the fact that here we're going to find out a few things, and already I guess that most of these might not turn up come Cheltenham. Obviously, if John Bond was here, then yeah, just cancel it all because it'd be ludicrous.
Yeah,
but it really would be. That would be the novice to end all novice chases, but it's still going to be some sight.
Yeah. There's definitely going to be a couple of bubbles bursts, which means it'll be a smaller field in the Arkle for sure. So that hands down, this is the best novice chase that'll take place this season, 100%. You can make the argument, just very quickly going through the rest of it. El Fabiola could be the Mullins second string in some way, because Daryl Jacobs always getting that right, isn't he, over Danny Mullins? And then we've made the case for Banbridge. Saint Roy as a closer, the only Grade 1 winner in the field. Phil Dorr beat Saint Roy last time out. And then you've got Flame Bear, who's 20 to 1. And then Visionary, as I said, who's only touched off in that Grade 1. So fascinating race. You can make a case for any of them, but hopefully one of the lads that's kind of points you in the right direction. We'll move on to the Irish Gold Cup, which isn't as competitive, and we'll take a look at the bettings we currently have on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. Gallopin des Champs at 1.35 favourites, Statler 6.2, some old favourites here in Kenboy 15.5, Fury Road 26.0, the Big Dog 28.0, and any second now an interesting entry here 34.0. And we'll go through the rest of the field. Franco de Port is 55.0. So yeah, Charlie, I presume it's a no bet here for you with Gallopin des Champs.
No bet. I mean, I think it would be looking through the field, like you say, there's some real old favourites amongst them, and it'd be disappointing though if he doesn't win this. With a setup to Cheltenham in mind, he's looked for all the world like the potential sort of superstar of this division. He was good, and like he did smash Fakir Duder either last day, and who's a pretty reliable yardstick himself. You wouldn't mind owning him. Statler, I thought, looked laboured on his return at Tremor. He's probably going to improve for that, but he's going to need to, and it's just a race without any real depth for me. And like I say, I'm looking forward to seeing Gallopin des Champs, but I would have thought anything short of a pretty decisive victory is actually going to be seen as a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, Dan, for you?
Yeah, I echo basically what Charlie said there. Looking forward to seeing Gallopin des Champs do his thing from the front. I guess Ken Boy, you'd think normally is the pace angle in these races, but at this stage of his career, it'd be pretty surprising if he was able to live with Gallopin des Champs in the early stages here. I didn't think Sattler was that bad behind Menendo the last day. I think he can run a staying on second and not do his Gold Cup chances any harm. I still think he'll be a player come March. The rest of these, obviously, it's hard to just see him living with the early relentless pace of Gallopin des Champs. And I say, yeah, let's hope for a solid performance and something we can really start talking about come the Gold Cup.
Yeah, it could go odds on for the Gold Cup. He's very impressive here. Don, I'm going to make a very small case for Statler, and I will be having a small interest bet. If Statler is going to be Gallopin des Champs, realistically, it would probably be in the Gold Cup trip, but it is a stiff enough 3 miles here, and I think he's kind of got this reputation as a slow horse because he's won the 3 mile 6 at Cheltenham, but he was very quick the way he quickened away in that race. It was good ground as well. I give him a squeak here. Do you at all at the prices around 7.0?
Yeah, I would accept that. I'd go along with Charlie said that it would be disappointing if Gallopin des Champs doesn't win and win well. But yeah, look, Statler, yeah, they were talking about dropping him down on trip at the start of the season, weren't they? Like going over 2.5 miles, and he won his beginner's chase, I think, over 2.5. But yeah, I thought he didn't do badly at Tremor the last day over 2 miles 6 against Manila Indo, giving him £8. I thought it wasn't a bad run for his seasonal debut. So yeah, I can see him coming forward from that. He'll obviously be better suited by 3 miles at Leopardstown than he was over by 2 miles 6 at Tremor. And yeah, I can see him running a race. I can see him running well and finishing second. But all things being equal, Daniel Galopin Des Champs, just all he's been doing, the way that he jumps, just looking forward to seeing him again.
Yeah, same. And it'll be interesting that Gold Cup market post the race. But I'm going for a small bet on Stallard. The lads are all Galopin Des Champs, but no bet in the race for any of them. So that's all our Grade 1 action from the Saturday. We're going to put in any other Leopardstown Saturday bets section here. So a few picks. We'll go over to you first with Don. This is a horse I like as well, Maxim. Now, a lot of people be saying he's qualified for Thames. He's favoured for the Cheltenham Anti-Post market. So make the case why he's going to win tomorrow.
Yeah, like he's got, I'm kind of, interesting to see him in this because he's got his Irish mark of 138. He was entered in Sandown. He's got his British mark of 145, which is a fine mark for the Pretence final, and now he's running again. So it is interesting that he's running again, but it's a big pot. You can see why they are. They're putting, Gordon Elliott has booked Cian Quirk to take £7 off, and Cian Quirk has just been riding out of his skin for the last couple of months. He's a very, very talented young rider, well worth a £7 claim. And just the ease with which he's been winning his races. I mean, it's mad that he got beaten off a mark of 99 at Punchestown in October. Now he's 138 and probably value for that. Proven over the course and distance. He's just rock solid. He keeps on improving. And he's a horse who you thought kind of might not be too far off Stairs hurdle class even now. And he's only 6. So in time, it's going to be very exciting to see where he goes. But yeah, I think in the meantime, he's a worthy favourite for this.
Yeah, and they didn't put him in the Stairs, which I thought was surprising in Cheltenham. Dan, you're taking on Don here.
Yeah, and I think Elliott normally throws a few at these handicaps, and it's obviously no different here. I think he's actually like maybe his lowest in the pecking order currently betting-wise. But he's a horse I've been waiting for to come back on good ground and step up in trip, and he finally gets those conditions here. You look back for his form, it all comes on better ground. He beat Hador last season during his novice campaign, who obviously went on to achieve decent things, was second to Flamebear at the end of the season. He was second to Banbridge, giving him £3 before staying on a 7th in the Martin Pipe. Again, relentlessly staying on up the hill that day. And you look at all of his worst runs, and 2 of them have come this season. They've been on deep ground, which he just clearly doesn't appreciate. He's also just been crying out for the step up to 3 miles. And I think off 131, he finally gets that good ground 3-mile trip. And I think when I last checked, he was about 17.5. I thought that was a good price for a horse only having his second season over hurdles. Still very unexposed. And yeah, I think this is the kind of race he's been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, interesting. An interesting play in that race. And Charlie, we're taking each other on in the 410. But I have the winner, so I don't know who you've picked here.
Yeah, well, you got the horse that likes winning this race for sure. I Phil Dudery for me for David Russell, Gordon Elliott. Transferred over from Nicky Henderson's, probably when Henrietta Knight decided that there were no decent trainers in Britain anymore. He ran well at the Grand National meet up 2.5. And then they've sort of been experimenting with trip. You know, he ran over the guts of 3 mile at Galway, then back to a 2.5. Ran okay behind Rock Road in a chase off 137. Maybe didn't quite get home. And then ran well in September, back down the 2 mile over hurdles behind Magna Glory this stall. He's £3 lower over fences, and I just wonder if the chasing could be the answer to him. He's 10.0 and yeah, winning place for me in what looks a competitive race, especially if you found the nailed on winner, Dan.
Yeah, well, sometimes you go at a race, you say, well, I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to end up, finding someone better. And look, you can make a case for a lot, and I think he made my shortlist as well, Charlie. But this is a horse that, won the race last year, as you touched on. Very impressive. He's won the race the last 2 years, Wave of the Sea for Joseph O'Brien and JP McManus. Now, I would say last year, JP McManus only had 1 runner in the race, and obviously he's got the Mouse Mars favourite this year. But I was really impressed. I was there that day when he beat Grange Walk by 1.5 lengths. He was rated 142. He's only rated £2 higher, and look, they've been kind of messing around with him a bit since then. I'd say this has been the target a long way out. And I was interested post Dex. He was in around 9.0. There has been a little bit of money for him already, so I can definitely see him going off as close to the favorite as possible, if not be the favorite. He ended up going off 5.5 favorite last year. And sometimes Leopardstown is very similar to Cheltenham. It is a sort of course and distance, and the same horses keep popping up. I just think he's even though you wouldn't think a 2-time winner is undervalued by the market, I still think he is undervalued, and I think there is a bit of value. I think 7.0 is currently the price at the moment. So I think personally he's a cracking bet if you're looking for one of the handicaps. So That's 2 selections each in two different handicaps there. We'll move on to best lays here, Don, and an interesting play for you. If you were to lay a horse on the Saturday, it is going to be appreciated just based on how competitive the race is.
That's it, Daniel. That's all. I appreciate it a lot as a horse. You have to. I mean, what's not to like? He's a Supreme Novices Hurdle winner. He's won his 2 chases. His jumping has been very good, but I just think that the race as a whole, it's more competitive than is deserving of a 2.75 favorite or thereabouts. So yeah, like as we discussed earlier on, you can make a case for pretty much all the runners in the race. Something has to be favored, but I just think the favorite should be a little bit bigger than appreciated is, and I just think he's underpriced.
Yeah, that's definitely a lay there for Don. And we're going to go to any other Saturday bets across the UK. Charlie, you have one here, but you have it in your best bet, so we'll leave it till then. Dan, Twin Jets is one for you and 110 in Sandown, and then you've won at Wetherby as well.
Yeah, Twin Jets, I just think he's going to be very hard to beat here. Like, dual bumper winner last season, made his early debut at Cheltenham, went off 10 to 11 favourite that day. Just wasn't right. 2 miles, probably ground was a bit on the sharp side. A few things went wrong, but got off the mark next time out over 2 miles. And then 2 mile 4 last time out of Plumpton, much improved performance. Won that in the manner of a stayer over a track that's pretty sharp. And I think back to Sandown, I think that's a track that's going to suit him much better. He actually beat Twin Power, who's second favourite here, by a pretty easy 9 lengths that day. He's only £8 worse off this time around. Look, I think on Mark 121 seriously underestimates him. He's been anti-post favourite for some much, much deeper races. And given he already seems to have the beating of the second favourite here, I think it was about 2.75 when I last looked. I think for a horse Milton thought would be a graded novice hurdle this season, he should be winning off 1-2-1. And then Daily Tiger's a bit more of a rogue shout in the 323 at Wetherby. Like, obviously, he joined Laura Morgan this season from Noel Mead and Gigginstown, sold for 40,000. He's been running in basically impossible tasks all season, like some of the top handicap chases. He was running in graded races as well. We did have a Mark 150 over fences, like over 2 miles as well. Like, he was just never really going to get competitive. And they've dropped him back over hurdles, back over 2 mile 4, and his hurdles mark is now 124. Like, he looks on his old form extremely well handicapped. The last time he was over 2 mile 4 and over hurdles, we came in a race at Limerick over Christmas, and he beat a couple of decent rivals that day. The runner-up in that race then went home to chase Journey with Me in a novice hurdle. The handicapper seems to have given him every chance. This was only his 7th hurdle start, his first handicap. The ground would probably want to be on the slower side for his optimum chance, but given that he's a big double-figure price, like it's an open race, he's the kind of horse I like to take a chance on because he can just pop up at a big price.
Yeah, a couple of shouts there for Dan. Incidentally, if you are listening and there's a lot of tips thrown at you, insights.matchbook.com. Friday afternoon, we'll have all the picks. Every selection put up here will be available there, so do check that out. One horse I did want to mention, the any other Saturday bets. We started a weekly update with Ollie Murphy, about 10 minutes podcast bite size on YouTube or in your podcast feed. And obviously we started it and then Itchy Feet wins. So we're taking the credit for Ollie Murphy's return to form. And he's had a lot of big price winners as well. But he did give this horse an honorable mention, Thunder Rock. And he's been pretty consistent on it ever since New Year's Day, that he didn't feel the track suited. They rode him differently. There was a lot of excuses behind the real whacker. So if he comes back to any way of his form, I think Thunder Rock is overpriced in that 5 runner City Isles against Jerry Colomb. Incidentally, he did mention that he did text Gordon, or actually rang Gordon on the Monday when he saw Jerry Colomb was entered, and wants to know was he running, and Gordon just said yes. I think that was the gist of the conversation. So great little battle considering all these former connections with Gordon. But Charlie, roll on to your best bet, but do mention Thunder Rock as well and your thoughts there, because that should be a fascinating race on Saturday.
Very much. I mean, like Thunder Rock, I was really strong on at Cheltenham, and I just thought he was underwhelming. I mean, he looked like he was going to fall out the back of the screen midway through, and then did stay on really eye-catchingly, didn't he? I'm just hoping, Dan, that he gets a more positive ride at Sandown this week and makes more use of his jumping. It just was a bit of a laboured performance through the first 3 quarters of the race, but he did well to kind of finish where he did, and I can see the angle there, much as I think Jerry Colomb is going to be tough to beat. I've kind of my best bet for Saturday. I've come down, I've sort of followed you at Leopardstown and gone for a trend horse at Dolos in the 2 mile handicap chase at Sandown, the 145. I think he's won this race 3 of the last 4 years. He ran well behind Grenadine in the Holden Gold Cup and ran fine behind Editor's Jeet in the Grade 2 at Canton over Christmas. His mark is a couple of pounds higher than last year, but Sandown, first weekend in February, seems to be what Dolos's season is keyed up for. And I think he's 3.75, 4.0, and yeah, I think that's a really good price in a race that he knows how to win, and Paul Nicholls obviously targets throughout the season.
Yeah, Dan, I didn't realize this was your best bet as well, but Twin Jets is your best bet.
Yep, he is. Yeah, I just see him hard to beat. I think he's a reasonable enough price as well.
And Don, for you, best bet on the Saturday card?
Banbridge, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, Banbridge. Yeah, I just think at the prices, you know, as we discussed, a really competitive race. It's mad that, you know, Appreciated is my lay and Banbridge is my bet in the same race, but it's not because it's all down to price. It's all about the odds. And Banbridge, yeah, as we discussed earlier on, I just think he's overpriced at around 8.6.
And I'm with Maxim. I think I agree fully with Don and what he said. Like rated 120, he's gone up £18. Would be off a 1 for 5 in the Pertemps. They're able to claim 7 off him here, so he's back to 131. And look, the prize money is very similar to in Leopardstown. I just think they've had a chat with the owners. And it is one of those horses I was wary of at about 7.0. This maybe sounds counterproductive. When you do see the money come, you start thinking this is definitely a target. And as I mentioned, that prize money, I think it's worth taking the risk that he's going to be trained for today. And they can always still run him in the Pertemps if he underperforms. So that's my best Saturday bet. We'll move on to Sunday and we'll take a look at the betting. It is the 140, the 2 mile, 5 furlong novice chase. An agreement in this with most of the guys here. Current Mighty Potter is your current favorite. I'd say get the prices up screen in a sec. But Dan, to talk to us a little bit about Mighty Potter, you do like him here.
The thing is, I've had a bit of a bone in Mighty Potter this season. I didn't like his chase debut at all. Like, I really thought he looked a bit ungamely. He was very keen. There were plenty of mistakes sneaking in. And I think I unfairly carried that into the Drinmore, despite having rewatched it back. He was far more impressive than I gave him credit for that day. I think it was just that classic, I'd already framed my opinion before the race had even run. I just need to take a step back and that might be impartial because I love James de Burley and really wanted to be on his side here. But having rewatched the Drinmore a couple of times, he really was impressive. Like, it's something about him, the way he travelled through that race. He seemed to take a pull off almost every fence. Like, he may not have jumped very well, but he was just going so well at all stages. And he seemed to have that race in safekeeping from some way. And I think this kind of 2.5 mile trip on good ground is really his ideal conditions at this stage of the game. And for as much as I love James de Burley, I'm struggling to back him against Mighty Potter, given the lack of experience, given we don't know how fresh he's going to be and how keen he's going to be this time. Like, he wasn't that kind of horse over hurdles, or briefly, we only saw him a couple of times over hurdles for Willie, but he wouldn't be able to get away with the same kind of antics he did last time out in a race of this nature. And I just think, considering what Mighty Potter's achieved and the style of it, and given a Gaillard de Mille obviously franked that form as well, I thought his price was pretty reasonable. I think may just also be the Willie Mullins factor at the Dublin Racing Festival keeping that up. But yeah, I think Mighty Potter is some solid horse here, especially here, and the price seems to have held up quite surprisingly well.
Yeah, 2.25. James Burley 4.0. Gaillard de Mille 6.0. Kilcourt a bit big price if he bounces back to form 15.0. And look, his form ties in well with Banbridge, Mighty Potter, Don, and that's the horse you're going for here as well.
Yeah, like, it's Mighty Potter versus Willie Mullins, isn't it? And yeah, like I just thought what he did in the Drinmore was very, very good, as Dan was saying there. Like, he just flowed. He made a fairly significant mistake at the third last. He should have come down, really. He did well to stand up. He kind of seemed to just, I don't know, give a little skip after landing. And Jack Kennedy did well to keep his rhythm going and keep his rhythm, or keep his balance. And he went on and he won really well. He beat Gaillard de Mille by 4.5 lengths. Gaillard de Mille then went and won the Neville Hotels chase, albeit it basically kind of fell apart a little bit, all right. But he's a very good horse, as we know. He reopposes as well. On Sunday, and James de Burley is kind of the unknown quantity. I suppose the fact that Willie Mullins ran him in the champion hurdle on his first run for him, that was significant, and that's a measure of the regard in which he's held. But you know, he was keen a little bit at Ferryhouse the last day, but he's a talented horse, and Kilcrut comes into it too. We know how big a bumper horse he was, but just think Mighty Potter, he's solid. He's a Grade 1 winner over hurdles as well. He won the race at Punchestown after Cheltenham last season. He's won his 2 chases. His jumping was good at Ferryhouse the last day. Can maybe improve again. Davy Russell's riding him. Yeah, this is probably a good trip for him for now. For all that, I think he can maybe go out and trip in time, but this kind of 2 mile 5, it's good for him. And yeah, I just think he's pretty rock solid.
Yeah, good case made there. And Charlie, it's a no bet for me. I I am slightly concerned about the odd mistake he throws in. I don't know what your take is on that, but you do like him here.
Yeah, I think he's a beast of a horse, this, to be honest. Yeah, as in, like, I agree with you. I mean, I think he made a couple of, certainly one significant error at Fairyhouse. And what was mightily impressive, like, it just didn't even seem to stop his momentum. You know, he was down his nose, and as soon as his head came back up, he's away again. And just like I said, he's got a huge engine. I think if his jumping continues to improve with experience, he's got it all in front of him. And I think the trip is absolutely fine at this stage of his life. And much as this is a race with plenty of quality performers in, I think he's definitely the best of them. And I think he's very, very good, this horse. I'm really, really excited about watching him run on Sunday.
Yeah, should be fascinating race for sure. So Mighty Potter for the guys, agreement with the three of them guys. No bet for me. And we're going to move on to the 210 Leopardstown, the Dublin Chase. And Blue Lord is your current 2.27 favourite. Gentleman to me, 7.5. Skull Royale, which I thought was an interesting runner, 11.0. And 21.0 bar. I'm a no bet. Dan and Charlie are Blue Lord with the caveat of no bet. Don, I was trying to make the case for Gentleman to me, and I just couldn't bring myself to put him up. And then when I saw you put him up in the document, I was raging with myself that there was some case there I just didn't see. So maybe make the case for Gentleman to me.
Yeah, like, I mean, you have to forgive quite a lot now this season, and I've been sucked into him on more than one occasion. But I still think that there's a top class horse looking in there. Like, he's been disappointing in his 3 runs this season, really. But he was so good at Aintree, and I know Aintree form sometimes if you can argue against it, especially if it hasn't been backed up in the interim. But he was so good. His jumping was very good. He beat Edwardstown. Now maybe Edwardstown underperformed a wee bit after the Arkle, but only a wee bit, I'd say. And Edwardstown, as we know, he's almost favourite or joint favourite or clear favourite, depending on where you look for the Champion Chase. And then we're coming into the spring, which is when Gentleman de May started improving last season. I think the ground is probably key. It's going to be, it's not going to be fast ground, hopefully, at Leopardstown at the weekend. I'm sure it won't be. But we're coming into spring ground now. And I just think that if he can get into his rhythm on the better ground and jump as well as he jumped at Aintree, then I think he can put it up to Blue Lord. Look, Blue Lord is a top class horse. We know that. He's only been beaten once over fences. I kind of thought he was a 2.5 miler, but then he went and won impressively at Leopardstown, proved himself a 2 miler. So he sets a high standard. But yeah, I think Gentleman de May, at some point, he's going to surprise people, and I'm hoping it's going to be on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely want to keep on track, and I may have a small bet on him, but it is a no bet for me. Guys, I'm happy to move on from Blue Lord if we want to talk about the Irish Champion Hurdle, because I think that's a fascinating race.
Just one horse to mention, Dan, who I think is, not with a view to this race, he's got no chance, but for the future, is Fast or Slow. He's just fascinating because he came into this season not a novice chaser because he won a 3-year-old chase in France, and it's just become so hard to place. But you go back to last season, he was second in the Coral Cup off 141, second at Punchestown off 144. You're basically forced to run the John Durkin on his second ever chase start. He's first in Ireland, last time out behind Galloping de Champs. Look, he's going to get outclassed and outpaced here, but this will be his 3rd run over fences. And obviously then we're starting to look towards handicaps with him. And he might just be one who might pop up in something like a plate, or they might have had a view to a race like that down the line, given his Coral Cup form from last season. So just keep an eye on him, how he performs. I expect him to be well beaten, but if he shows some promise, I can see him turning up and being a key player in a big spring handicap.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe one for the tracker, perhaps. Chanel Pharma Irish Champion Hurdle. We'll take a look at the betting. State Man is around 2.1 currently. Honeysuckle 2.75. Vauban is currently a 5.0 shot, and it's 51.0 bar. Charlie, over to you on this one. This is a fascinating race, isn't it? I mean, just as a racing fan, Constitution Hill will be watching this race. Really looking forward to it, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, whether he'll be that worried or Constitution Hill, if he's watching on, I'm not sure. But it is a belter, as in State Man's looked. I mean, obviously he was very impressive last year in the handicap at Cheltenham, and he's followed that progression on and looked incredibly good. He seems to be just a very straightforward horse that gets the job done, and he's kind of versatile. It looks like he'd be a dream to ride. Obviously, Honeysuckle, they lost her unbeaten record last time behind Tihupu, who then franked that form and was very impressive the other day. Vauban travelled incredibly strong behind State Man on his first run, and the vibes are sort of lukewarm, weren't they? And you're wondering whether he can come forward. And then Pied Piper and Zanahir, quality performers in their own right, but in theory got no chance this weekend. I ended up, I don't know, this is probably heart rule in my head, because I remember saying earlier in the year that I thought it was ridiculous. Constitution Hill was sort of shorter in the betting than Honeysuckle, the champion hurdle, and it looks pretty stupid that now. So, we live and learn in life. But I'm still thinking, maybe the Hatton's Grace run in December wasn't as bad as it seemed. She travelled strong. She looked like she was coming to win the race, and got done from the back of the last. And I think it's a contest where she hasn't always been at her very best. There was a couple of years ago, Ronald Pump ran her fairly close in that race, and then she sort of jumped forward from there. And so, like I say, it's probably going to look a really foolish selection come Sunday. But I just think you take that run out of the equation. Would she be favourite still? I think there's a strength of possibility that she would be, and so at 3.0, maybe a little bit bigger than that, I'm going to chance her. But I'm really looking forward to this race for loads of reasons. But to see if State Man can just continue that sort of unbeaten march towards the champion hurdle, become a really credible contender to Constitution Hill. And also, I'm really intrigued to see whether Vauban can step forward again. I mean, he looked brilliant last year as a juvenile. And it's only really that the vibes were so lukewarm that this wasn't going to be a season and whatever else. But I thought that the run at Leopardstown last time was full of promise. I mean, like I say, I'd nearly argue he travelled like the best horse in the race and then just flattened out. So lots of interest. But like I say, Honeysuckle for me, but it's a tentative selection in what looks a corking renewal.
Yeah, Don, what I'm nearly most looking forward to is seeing this market, because the money hasn't really missed too much on Honeysuckle. If everyone remembers the first champion hurdle, I think she was available 3.5, 3.0 in the morning and went off a very short price. So if the money does come for it, it may just be sentimental money. It's hard to differentiate the two sides of it, but it's fascinating if she can get close to State Man in the market here.
Yeah, no, it's all fascinating, really, like from now to post time and then after post time during the race. But like I agree with a lot of what Charlie said. Like I think her Hatton's Grace hurdle run this season wasn't bad at all, and I think she'll be better on Sunday. She 2.5 miles on soft ground on her seasonal debut. It may be that just stretches her. I know she'd won Hatton's Grace hurdle a number of times before, but when she won it in 2019, it was soft ground. She already had a run. She won it in 2020. She only just got home by a half length from Ronald Pump. That was on soft ground, over 2.5 miles, obviously on her seasonal debut. And then last year, when she beat Ronald Pump by much further, it was good ground, 2.5 miles. Again, this seasonal debut, soft ground, 2.5 miles. I just think the combination of those three factors don't play to her strengths. So, look, she was beaten, and the day was probably going to come at some point. Her shred of invincibility, that's been lifted. But she's a top, like all she's done, 3 Irish champion hurdles. Only Isterback and Hurricane Fly have won more than 2. 2 champion hurdles. Like, she's just such a superstar mare. And the reception she got last season on the way down to the start before she'd even competed was fantastic. And then coming back, you just love to see that replicated. And I think even this season, there's something about a hero or a heroine who bounces back after defeat. I think it would be even bigger if she could go and win it this season. But look, it's a hell of a race. State Man is very good. He's a county hurdle winner. He's won his 2 hurdles this season. I thought his jumping the last day in the Matheson hurdle was better than it was in the Morgiana. And Vauban, again, agree with Charlie. He ran a big race the last day. He was expected to come on a fair bit from it. And you could see Willie Mullins afterwards. He was nearly happier with Vauban's run than he was with State Man's. I think he surprised them a wee bit. So, look, I know it's hard for 4-year-olds turning 5 when they move into open company, but he was the outstanding juvenile last season. And I think he could get closer to State Man even on Sunday than he did, and therefore shortening the champion hurdle market. But over everything is Honeysuckle. I just love to see her winning again, and I think she can.
So yeah, 2 votes for Honeysuckle. We're team State Man, Dan. So are we the Grinch? I mean, like, what's going on here?
Yeah, we are. We're here to ruin the party, Dan. That's what we're here to do. It's a fascinating little race. This tactically, it's a bit of a struggle to figure out how this is going to work. Like, Takarengo's in there, but he's also in on Saturday, so he would have been a pace angle, but he probably won't even run. And after that, you're looking at a bunch of horses that there is no clear pace. I just wonder if State Man might be the one to take up that mantle here. Obviously, he raced in a clear second in the Matheson, who's a few lengths off She's Electric, who's just a keen going front runner, but he was clear of the remainder. And his jumping now has got to a point where they might be more willing to do and go from the front with him now. Like, he seems a bit more professional. We know he's got the stamina as well for 2.5. He won over 2.5 at Punchestown as well. And I just love the way the last day, when Vauban came to him, it looked like it was going to get quite close, but he really did just kick away and cleared home quite strongly there. Obviously, hurdles taken out as well. He's got that stamina in abundance. So if he's allowed to dictate what might be a fairly slowly run race, if nothing pressures him, given we know the likes of Vauban and Pied Piper are almost certainly held up. Zanna here won't be able to go the pace. Honeysuckle might pressure him, but it might get a bit tactical there. But if Saint Man is able to dictate from the front, he might just have first say about when they're allowed to extend, and that might be the difference here. And also, when it gets to this stage, I do just tend to go with the up-and-coming progressive horse, and I love Honeysuckle, I really do, but this might just be a bridge too far against an up-and-coming State Man.
Yeah, I think this year's horse is State Man, so I went a roundabout way of coming back to him on this race. So 2 votes for State Man, 2 votes for Honeysuckle. Vauban probably wins the Chanel Farmer Irish Champion Hurdle. We'll move on to the Tattersall Ireland Novice Hurdle and the Facile Vega race, basically. We'll take a look at the betting. Facile Vega actually drifted slightly, 1.5 since Dex. High Definition, 8.5. In the Pocket, 11.0. Irish Point, 11.0. Dark Raven, 14.0. Ilete Toms, 15.0. Don, I'm kind of laughing just because of the sheer quality in behind Facile Vega again. So even though 1.5 looks big, you look at what he's up against and you're kind of going, maybe there's a case for someone in there.
Yeah, this is a hell of a race. Like, In the Pocket was very good on his in winning at Wexford first of all, and then winning at Naas last time when they took the last couple of hurdles out. He did well to keep on as well as he did to beat 3-Card Bragg, who's enhanced the form since. Irish Point has finished second, just beat Marine Nationale in the Royal Bond, was finished second behind Champ Kiley in the Lawless of Naas race, a dual Grade 1 runner-up. Dark Raven was very good in beating Dr. Bravo in his maiden hurdle at Leopardstown over Christmas, and Dr. Bravo has come out since and won at Down Royal. So it's a deep race, and Ilete Town, like, we know how good he is. He's a high class horse, and deserves to get a win like this on the board. But High Definition, I just think he's the fascinating one. Like, his class from the flat, everyone knows, like, he's a Beresford Stakes winner. He was beaten a neck in the Tattersall's Gold Cup. He reached a flat rating of 119, which is a hell of a flat rating to take over hurdles. And his hurdling debut, I know he jumped a bit to his right throughout, and that didn't help him. But the way that he kept on was really likable. And if he can just jump a wee bit more fluent, like he was to his right, and he was a bit kind of sticky going into his hurdle, so he's going to have to jump better if he's going to get close to Facile Vega. But yeah, he's just got that back class, and if he can improve again in his jumping, he could morph into a top class hurdle. Look, Facile Vega has done everything. He's won his 4 bumpers, 2 champion bumpers, won his 2 hurdle races, including the Grade 1 last time, and he beat Ilete Tom. And then Ashrow Diamond, she's enhanced the form since, won the Solarina hurdle last time. So look, he could be a superstar, and he's got the breeding, obviously. But I just think High Definition might give him a race.
And I'll throw one at you, Don, because I'm in full agreement. High Definition without the favourite here. I've put him up for the Ballymore at about 42.0. Just thinking how the race will go. Like you said, if he does finish the second to Facile Vega 3 or 4 lengths, they'll surely reroute him to the Ballymore as opposed to take him on again in the Supreme.
That's it. Yeah, they have that option, don't they? It depends how close he gets to Facile Vega. Like, if he beats him, then he'll go for the Supreme. You'd imagine, right? That's easy. If he gets to within a half a length staying on, yeah. You know, if he gets to within 4 lengths staying on, Ballymore. But yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, everyone will be like, well done, Dan. He beat Facile Vega. No, it's not good, lads. Charlie, if there was another horse I'd put up maybe in the without fab market, Dark Raven's very interesting as well, and you like.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you make a really good point, you know, as in, like, you can be fooled into thinking, you know, because Facile Vega's 1.5, this is an uncompetitive race. I mean, it probably just shows the sort of quality and the regard that Facile Vega has, that he is that sort of price in a race with heaps of quality in behind him. And because of the price, I couldn't be with Facile Vega at 1.5 because of the depth of quality in behind. And so the without market for me, and yeah, Dark Raven, I just thought looked very, very good at Leopardstown. Like Don said, the form's been franked by Dr. Bravo, and he just went through the race with ease, and in spite of the hurdles being out, you know, effortlessly drew clear of a deep maiden hurdle. And like I said, the form has been franked. I can see the case for High Definition as well, and like I said, there's stacks of these in behind it in the without market would be very interesting. But you got to pick one, and like I say, Dart Raven for me, because I just think he's unbeaten. We don't know the ceiling of his ability, and like I say, I think whatever happens, he's a great performer in the making. And like, yeah, if he can step forward on that hurdle debut, I think he can. I'm not saying he can beat Facile Vega, but I think he can run a massive race, and in the without market, I think he's very interesting.
Yeah, and Woody has said it, Facile Vega will be revved up to peak in March. I know all horses will be like that, but definitely is on record saying that about Facile Vega. Anything to add here, Dan? I know it's a no bet for you.
Yeah, I will just go in on Dark Raven. I'm a big fan of the horse as well. Like, I've actually backed him for the Ballymore. Like you've done for High Definition, I'm probably looking for the same result, really. I do think over 2 miles, he might find this on the sharp side. I think they said after his maiden hurdle, which was impressive, but he did lose his place slightly down the back, and they said, like, I was actually quite happy to see him do that over 2 miles. And it was a similar story in his bumpers. Like, he was a champion 4-year-old bumper horse, the best in the country. The form of those races worked out pretty well, but he didn't do it easily then either. Like, he did come off the bridle, but then all of a sudden he just finds a second gear and just really powers on home. I think stepping up in time is going to be his game. And yeah, I think he's a horse with some ability, but whether quite he's got the speed in the early stages to compete over 2 miles on relatively quick ground, I'm not sure, but I can definitely see him flying home for second. And I hope that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, we'll all be like trying not to be Facile Vega here with our Ballymore slips. One Ballymore slip in DC is in the pocket, which is another. I think that's nearly every horse covered now. So keep an eye on any of those 3 horses to finish behind Facile Vega. Not too close. It's almost like a handicap trying to get into the Ballymore here.
Yeah.
Charlie, any other Sunday bets before best bets? You do have one from Musselburgh.
Yeah, I came down with one in the 355 at Musselburgh of all places. A bit of a from one extreme to the other, and yeah, I came down with one of Ollie Greenall's and Josh Guerrero's. They're flying along at the moment. Duke of Deception, he ran a super race the last day at Kelso. He was only beat 3/4 of that to the limit on his second chase start. He's up £2, but that doesn't really matter. Henry Brook takes over from Toby Wynn, and just a race with not a huge amount of depth. And I'll be interested to see what price he is down. I don't know if he prices up yet for that sort of contest, but I thought he was one that could keep stepping forward over fences and get the win on the board.
Yeah, that should be priced up tomorrow at some point, but be interesting there. One to keep an eye on. And Musselburgh on Sunday, Duke of Deception. Move on to best bets. Don, I know you had one in the any other section, but it's also your best bet. So take it away. It's a Leopardstown pick.
Yeah, in the 240, the 2 mile 5 handicap chase, the Bulmers Leopardstown handicap chase, Mascada. I just think she's a seriously progressive mare of Henry de Bromhead. She fell at Fairyhouse on her penultimate run when she was coming up, probably going to win her. I mean, it was the second last fence she fell at, so it's hard to know, but the subsequent events suggest that she probably would have won that day, and the subsequent event was the Tim Duggan Memorial Chase at Leopardstown or Limerick over Christmas, which she won really impressively. She was a bit keen early on through her race, but she found lots for pressure. She found more than, it kind of came down to what she was going to find. It came down to a good tussle between her and Rebel Gold and Cravat, and she found plenty for pressure. She stayed on well. She won by 3 lengths in the end. And then Rebel Gold, Pat Foley's horse, came out since and won the Dan and Joan Moore Memorial handicap chase at Fairyhouse. So the race has been working out well. She got a £9 hike for that, up to mark 141, which is, it's fine. I mean, and she's into a Leopardstown chase, but the Tim Duggan chase, it's a good race as well. Like, it's normally a high class handicap, and as we've seen from the subsequent events as well, Rebel Gold going and winning the Dan Moore chase, it was a good renewal this year. It's an out 150 handicap, similar to the Leopardstown chase. So I think a £9 hike is fine. Rachel Blackmore takes the ride as well. She's only 7. She continues to improve, and yeah, I think she could run a big race.
Yeah, keep it brief there. Liberty Dance for me in the 110 at Leopardstown. I think she's going to be a lot better than a mark of 129. Really impressed with her 2 Thurles wins, and can see her going very close here. I know she's the favourite, but getting Party Central vibes from last year. Same jockey and same trainer. Dan, best Sunday bet.
Yeah, I decided to go to Musselburgh because the racing in Ireland is no good. So we go up to Scotland instead. And I'm going back to Harry Derham, who did me a nice favour last week with Dargianini, who won well at a decent enough price. He's got Fidelio Vallis in the Scottish Champion Chase. His first start for the yard. Long break, long absence since we last saw him. It was back in December 2021. But given he's normally kept for best round, and obviously he's moved yards since, that isn't too much of a concern for me. But the handicapper has been very generous in his off time. He's dropped him £7 down to mark 139. Had been rated in the high 140s as a novice chaser. And this is only going to be his 9th start over fences. Like, it's not as if he's thoroughly exposed at this stage of his career. Like, you look, he's only had 3 starts in handicaps as well. He's won 2 of those 3. One of those came off 137. The other came off 143. Clearly loves good ground. He's a precocious kind of front running type, which is really going to suit Musselburgh. Ground's in his favour. His former boss, Harry Derham's former boss, that is, Paul Nicholls, always targets this race. I mean, he won it 3 of the last 5 years. And it seems Harry is somewhat adopted a similar approach with his approach to target training for certain races. I think this has got a long-term plan written all over him, given he's been leniently treated, and I can see him giving a bold shout from the front.
Yeah, he's had a brilliant start to his training career. A couple of comments before we get to Charlie's best bet. Musselburgh, where the hell is Musselburgh? And Tom Leach, don't ruin the podcast with Musselburgh. Yes,
Too late.
There you are. Too late. It's done. No more Musselburgh. And Charlie's best bet is coming in Leopardstown, so maybe have a little listen. Charlie.
Yeah, going back across, Mighty Potter for me. Like I said, for all the reasons, I love the horse, and much as it's a competitive contest, I'm hoping that he's going to show that he's a class apart.
Brilliant. Listen, great hour, guys. Really enjoyed getting your thoughts. Hit that like button and do comment on the YouTube video. Any feedback for the show? Again, if anyone misses Tom Stanley, let him know in the comments. He'll be much appreciated. I'll make sure all the comments get to him. He'll be back next week. And for all podcasts leading up to the Cheltenham Festival, which we do have a lot of exciting Cheltenham podcasts previews planned. So do check out our pinned tweet on Twitter currently. We do have I should have pronounced this before saying this on air, the Lyra Estate in Kilkenny, one of the best hotels in Ireland, which I really should know how to pronounce. But that's a pinned tweet. It's a great Cheltenham preview night that we're sponsoring Matchbook, so do check that out. But my thanks to Don, my thanks to Dan, my thanks to Charlie. Do enjoy the racing over the weekend. Please gamble responsibly, and we'll chat to you next Friday. Bye-bye.